Hello there, I'm Vivek Atray, and this is PlayWrite's conversation series. And today we have the very illustrious, the very famous, the legendary cricketer David Gower with us. David, thank you for joining us.
Vivek, very nice to see you there, and welcome to everyone.
Thank you. David, joining us today will be a lot of people from North India, especially where we are based. Chandigarh is a city which loves its cricket, and we're going to have a lot of people who are youngsters as well. So older generation, that is my generation, and maybe a few years younger, would know a lot about you. In fact, when we sent out the invitation for people to watch this show, there was so much of a wow factor. Suddenly, everyone was like, wow, that's going to be great. So did you realize that people love you so much in India, and you've been here 3 or 4 times? How has been the experience?
Yeah, no, I've been to India many times, absolutely. First time was way back in probably, when was it, 79, 80, around there, 1980. I think it was the Jubilee Test match in Bombay as it was, Mumbai as it is. And
Yeah.
I mean, I've been there as a player, I've been there as a commentator, I've been there to give lectures, I've been there as a tourist. So I've seen, I like to think I've seen quite a lot of India already. And I also know there is a lot more to it than I have yet to discover. But I am aware that there is a following in the subcontinent. I'm very much aware that whenever I go there, people remember fondly what happened on the field, and that starts, as I say, from 1980ish onwards, the 2 tours, 81-2, 84-5 as a player, all those matches we played back in the UK as well. And I mean, if there's one thing that is absolutely undeniable in this world, is Indians love cricket. So I'm very happy to be part of that.
Yeah, Indians love cricket. In fact, there was a time when people like us, I was in school or college following cricket, we used to listen to radio commentary, and we used to take these little transistor sets to school. And I was in a school in Delhi, and I actually used to put the radio in my blazer pocket inside, and I would have a little earphone wire coming to my wrist, and I would listen to it like this without the teacher finding out. Maybe she found out one day, and then I was in trouble.
Well, look where you are now, Vivek. Look where you are now. I mean, it can't have all been bad, can it?
It wasn't too bad. You're right. But you, before I come to other questions about your career, I just want to ask you. Chandigarh is where we are based, and Chandigarh, you've been to play a match, and this was 1984-85, and you were actually in the middle of a rain-curtailed match, and as we discussed, you were the captain. You actually scored a 50 before the match was called off, and then it was replayed, or it was played in a 15-over format, which England won by 7 wickets. And this was the old stadium, the Sector 16 cricket stadium, where many of us have grown up playing. So do you remember anything about that, or your impressions about Chandigarh as a whole?
Well, I'm slightly disappointed that the 50, because at that stage on that particular tour, we were having a good tour. I mean, it was an extraordinary tour, 84-85, which, if you remember, started with the assassination of Mrs. Gandhi. So we were thrown into a political turmoil, upheaval, right at the start of the tour. Had a couple of weeks off, came back, started up again, had another very, very unfortunate assassination, our Deputy High Commissioner in Bombay at the time. And so the first 2 or 3, 4 weeks of that tour were, dare I say, unusual. When we got underway, then in the end, it all panned out rather nicely. We had a very, very successful time. We had a brilliant tour, fascinating tour. But personally, I was not making as many runs as I'd have liked to. So in between the test matches, we played these ODIs. We went from city to city to do so. When we got to Chandigarh, I got this 50. I've got the photograph, and I know the photo. I can picture the photograph. I've seen it so many times where I've got arms aloft. I've got the hands up, celebrating 50 with Mike Gatting as my partner at the crease. And I'm looking at our dressing room. I know this. I'm looking at our dressing room to say, look, there you are. Finally, I've got some runs. And then I was trying to remember. I was trying to look up the score the other day on Cricinfo, thinking, well, I'm sure I got 50 in Chandigarh, but there's no record of it. It's not in my official records. It's, I got whatever it was, 19 or something. That can't be right. And I finally remembered that this is what had happened, that we'd had the rain, played the game, stopped it, started again, 15 overs each. And luckily, of course, we came out on top. So it had to be more of a cameo in the second part of that game. So yes, I mean, it's lodged in there, it's in there somewhere. That must have been, I guess, that must have been the first time I was in Chandigarh.
Yeah, so it was the picturesque Sector 16 stadium, and you actually hit a six during maybe your 50 or in the 19 runs. Also, you hit a six. And one gentleman I spoke to yesterday actually recalled you hitting that six so effortlessly. And your opposite number was Sunil Gavaskar, who actually came into bat at number six or something because it was a 15 over game, and Gavaskar was not that sort of player. And he was two not out in four balls. And today, to be two not out in four deliveries and losing by 7 runs, I mean, it would have been a crime. But in those days,
yeah, Sonny. I mean, I'm very fond of Sonny. We played against each other a lot. We had that too. We were opposing captains on that tour. And yes, he's a very shrewd little man, is Sonny. But as we know, his one-day career was a bit checkered, and the odd thing in the World Cup, which didn't go down well. I mean, for that man who is supremely talented, let's face it, Sonny Gavaskar is one of the world's great batsmen of all time. His Test match record amplifies that. Whatever it was in one-day cricket, I mean, he could play shots for sure. But whatever it was, I mean, in those days, let's face it, playing 15 overs a side was unusual. It wasn't like nowadays where, for instance, you separate the Test matches from the ODIs in a tour. We have separate squads. Yes, there are, the great players still overlap, and the great players still play in both formats, or all three formats now. But in those days, everything got mixed in. So we had one squad. We picked the one-day team from the same squad as the Test team, as did Sonny. I suppose India as the home side could make adjustments as they saw fit. And we just sort of made it up as we went along. So it was all quite good fun.
Well, talking of Sonny Gavaskar, and since we're on the subject of batting, I mean, there were very few players like you who could play with that silken grace, I would call it. I was listening to Richie Benaud commentating, and he said, what a majestic pull shot in the 1985 Ashes series, which you were captain and you won. And he then added the word casually majestic, which actually stuck with you for some reason. And you were not a casual player at all. You were so graceful, so prolific, more than 8,000 test runs, 117 test matches. And all those hundreds, I mean, why did that casual thing stick to you? And why was the impression like that? Did you try your best to get it away from you? Did you succeed?
Well, the casualness is an impression, isn't it? I think there are so many words that have been used over many years to describe the way I batted. Languid is one casual. Casually majestic, I'll take anything from Richie Benaud. Benaud was a very, very fine man, the most brilliant commentator, and an absolute wordsmith. I mean, he was the great gift for Richie, and it was lovely working alongside him when I first started in commentary boxes. But the great skill he had was to find a couple of words at the right time just to sum up a situation. No long verbose sentences, just a couple of words, and he was perfect at that. So I'll take that. I mean, the appearance of casualness was partly constructed as a sort of self-defense mechanism. So in other words, as a batsman at the crease, rather than show nerves or show tension, this air of relaxed casualness was something that was there to protect me and to give the impression to the guy at the other end, the bowler at the other end, that I was fine. Obviously at times I can look back at all sorts of times, whether it be Ashes, India, West Indies, all around the world, home and away, where the tensions mount, and it's very hard to hide that on your face. But if you can try and give an air of relaxed peacefulness, confidence, then I think that's a good thing to have. I mean, there are various players do it in different ways. Viv Richards, the great Viv Richards, had a swagger. He had the sort of physicality and sort of the appearance to sort of have that swagger as his defense mechanism. And he was obviously the most brilliant player, but I couldn't walk out with the swagger. That's I'm not built to swagger, so I could only affect this air of relaxation, confidence from that way. I mean, it's the only thing that upset me in all those years I played was if someone said to me, "You don't care," because that was the corollary of looking relaxed. You could walk out there looking relaxed. You could walk back, be it with 5 to your name or 105 or 205,
Right.
and you could do the same. And the appearance of, if people think you are not caring, and they've paid to come and watch, and they're fans, and you've had a bad day, well, they're entitled to be upset for their own reasons. But it's every now and again I had to explain to people quite sort of firmly that it wasn't that I didn't care. It's just the way it might have looked. Because let's face it, as the individual, our days as players, as a batsman, if you walk out to bat and it's all over in 10 minutes or less, you've had a bad day.
Right.
You don't enjoy it. There's no fun in that. You go back, sit in the dressing room, watch someone else bat. Yes, there's the team environment, and you get through that, of course. But the best fun you have is by being out there playing well. So that in whatever else you say, that is the biggest incentive.
Yes, David, we've had a few graceful players in India as well. And looking at Gavaskar and Tendulkar, they were technicians and they were perfect in their technique, no doubt. But we had people like G.R. Vishwanath, and we had V.V.S. Lakshman, and now we have Rohit Sharma, who seemed to play with that effortless grace that you also had. Very few, if I can say so, at that time, English players were, in fact, as fit looking as you as well. We had Gatting and Gooch and Botham. I mean, they were heavy, big guys, and you were this slim fellow. So how was this? How did that work?
It just works. I could try, but I have put some weight on now, sadly. It's taken a while, but I'm a little heavier than I was during my playing days. Yes, if you look at Ian Botham when he first started as a 21-year-old, he's always been a very strong man. And he was just that bit slimmer too when he first started. Yes, over the years, he put on a bit of timber. Mike was always stocky. Graham was, again, sort of on the heavier side. But let's face it, Graham was a brilliant trainer. Graham was very, very fit and because he kept himself so fit, was able to play up until he was 40 and beyond. And I take my hat off to him. So whatever, God gave me in terms of natural fitness, that sort of slim build that I used to have was just nature. It's genetics, it's nature, it's parenthood. It's just, it's one of the things you cannot control. Likewise, the style, that sort of so-called languid casual style, that was just something that evolved by itself. I didn't sort of make a conscious effort to do that. That's just how I played. And that's, it's when I started, I played that way. When I was at school, I played that way. And when I had to take it seriously, I played that way. So, some of these things are just things that happen.
Yes, David. So talking about the art of batting, and you're a left-hander, you played left-handed, and Jeff Lawson and Kapil Dev, in fact, are the two bowlers who got you out the most, and they were quick bowlers. Lawson was quicker than Kapil Dev, but Kapil Dev was a good swing bowler. He could seam the ball. And which was the delivery that used to trouble you most? The one coming in from outside the off stump or something going away towards the slips? And also, which were the bowlers who really troubled you, even if these two got your wicket more times?
It's an all-encompassing question, isn't it? Look, let's face it, over a course of, say, 15 years of Test cricket, you can get out in any number of different ways. In fact, probably in almost all the possible ways, without ever being handled the ball or stuff like that. And there'll be times where it's all about concentration. It's all about you just playing well, concentration, playing well, where the traditional angles across the left-hander were always going to be a problem. If you work it out, of course, then you know what to leave, you know what to play at, and you make runs. Someone like Capel, to use those two examples, Capel would tend to swing the ball more often into me, but could obviously, he had the ability to go either way. So as a batsman, that's your challenge. You've got to pick which way it's going, watch the ball carefully, and the prime thing is not to play at balls you shouldn't be playing at. So if he could beat me on the inside edge, he could get me LBW. if he could find the outside edge, he could still get me out. So that's why someone like Capel was world class. Lawson, I mean, to use him as the other example, in fact, I had no idea I got out so many times to Lawson, but anyway, it must be true. But he had, as you quite rightly said, more pace. Therefore, especially say in Australia, you have the extra bounce sometimes to deal with. I can promise you this, I do not remember getting out 14 times to Jeff Lawson. I remember the odd one. I remember one Adelaide, for instance, where he just managed to get one to bounce a little bit higher, caught the shoulder of the bat, ended up caught by the keeper, probably. So thin edge through to the keeper. So I remember bits like that. And that's, that can happen to any batsman against any quick bowler. Just that little bit of extra effort from the bowler. As ever, then and now, you've still only got less than half a second, 0.4 of a second to do all the right things and get whatever it is, 4.5 inches of bat on 2.5 inches of cricket ball. So it's, at 90 odd miles an hour, things have got to be working well. I mean, I to be honest, I do not spend my life looking down the list of people who've got me out. They know who they are. I'm sure they're very happy to have me in their book, have me in their bags. I mean, there are all sorts of people. And for instance, my biggest problems would have come against, first of all, the West Indies pacemen of the 80s. So the great West Indies pace attacks of the 80s, all my mates now, Holding, Roberts, Garner, Marshall, Croft, all those guys. Yes. They were an absolute handful. I would stick by my assertion, which I've often said, which is that was the finest I had ever played Test cricket. Simply because, not simply because of the two things, the two elements. A lot of great batsmen and the world's finest bowling attack. I mean, no other side has ever had 4 men at any one time of that combined pace. So I'd say that was a mighty tough ask in those days, and the people that got runs against them did mighty well, I can tell you. So West Indies always caused problems. I think Malcolm Marshall was probably the best of them, but it's a close run thing when you look at people like Andy Roberts, Michael Holding, with their pace and skills, Joel Garner with his height, Colin Croft with his angle and pace. And lots of Australians. I mean, I look back on the days of playing in my early days against Dennis Lillee as one of the great bowlers of all time. After Dennis had luckily gone past his peak, I suspect. But I used to enjoy those contests. I mean, I looked at someone like Dennis with great respect. We used to sort of look each other in the eye on the field and exchange the odd word. He got me out. I got some runs. I mean, and it's all in the book somewhere.
Great answer. In fact, David, that was very, it gave an insight into your way of thinking against the bowlers. And I know you started off against someone called Liaquat Ali, who bowled you a friendly short pitch ball, which you pulled for 4. We don't want to get into that. It was a 4 of the first ball of your Test career, and somehow that added to your aura and your persona. But I also want to say that you probably scored centuries against the best bowling attacks. Which was your most favorite innings, if any, if 1 or 2? The double century against India in Birmingham, I suspect, would not be it. There may be a time when you scored lesser runs, but you felt more, satisfied with your performance.
Yeah, I mean, the double hundreds against India was important because it was my first in any form of cricket, actually. It's a marker. It's a big mark. But to pick one, I mean, the 150 odd against the West Indies in Jamaica, Sabina Park, was important to me as well, and I was very proud of that. The hundreds I got against Australia in '85 add up to a bigger story because that summer was my finest summer. I think, just very simply, the finest summer. The combination of captaining England to victory in the Ashes, making a lot of runs, record number of runs for a captain in a series, an Ashes series. That was, these are all landmarks, these are all markers, these are all things that add up to something special. And there was another double hundred against Australia, Edgbaston, that year, which was part of getting us ahead in the series, so it was important. And then the 150 at the Oval at the end gave me as much pleasure and satisfaction because that's where we needed to nail that game to make sure that we had the Ashes. And so day one at the Oval, 1985, 157, I think it was, with Graham Gooch, Graham at the other end for most of that, all of that, in fact. And that put us in the strong position we needed to be in to win that game and win the Ashes. So that's your, or in my, that's my perfect storm. That's my absolute highlight, because we dream of, we want to win everything. You want to still beat everyone. You dream of winning Ashes series. You dream of doing that as a batsman, as a captain, and that's where it all came together. So that's why I look back on that with the fondest of all memories.
I'm sure you do. And actually, when you were in conversation with Clive Lloyd in a show which I saw on YouTube, and he was talking to you, and you said that the West Indies didn't need a spinner at that time because you had such pacemen. And Australia of later years was as good a team as the West Indies of that time, and they had Glenn McGrath and Shane Warne. But Shane Warne was not required by those West Indians. So I remember that. But I'm going to switch topics to two all-rounders, one your friend and one our Chandigarh all-rounder again. So Ian Botham, just describe him a little for us as you know him, because you are such great friends with him. I've noticed you on commentary. You've been so close to him. And maybe a little comparison with Kapil Dev, and we'll allow you the impartial judgment on who was better.
Well, you can have that as well. Yes, Ian is what I'd call an unrelenting force of nature. I mean, he's an extraordinary man. I have known him, I suppose, for 40 odd years now. He made his debut the year before me for England, and we played together in sides around the world for 15 years after that, from 78 onwards. So I've been to all parts of the world with him. I've done things like safaris with him in South Africa and India. We've been looking at, in fact, for instance, on the last tour we did together as commentators in India, I take great pride actually in introducing Sir Ian to wildlife, to safaris, which we did in South Africa first, and did that together. And then in India, I forget which year it was now, but a few years ago now, probably, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years ago now, we were, in between games, we would go and look for tigers in places like Pench. So, for instance, when we were in Nagpur or somewhere like that, hour and a half to Pench, and we could spend 2 or 3 days there trying to track down the elusive national beast of India. I mean, I've been a huge wildlife fan for many, many years, and do a lot of work with conservation charities in these countries. And the tigers are just simply the most beautiful cats of all. And so we've done stuff like that. So Ian and I have done all sorts of things. We've drunk a lot of wine together, and he's now a wine salesman. He's now got his own label, and he's trying to peddle that. And I'm sure he'll do very, very well with it. As a player, he carried, his basic ingredient was supreme self-confidence. Huge ability, of course, in all fields, as a batsman, as a bowler, as a fielder, and a huge thirst off the field as well. So with Ian, you are basically on duty 24/7. And we have had to admit over the years that in social terms, we kind of share him around a bit, whether it's in a team environment or a commentary box environment, we share him around. So, people can take him out or go with him and suffer the consequences, and someone else can do it following night. But he has been a loyal friend. He's been a really loyal friend over the years. We have spats, of course, we have disagreements. He is an all-rounder, tends to favour the bowler rather than the batsman. So if we have arguments about, things on the field to do with batters and bowlers, me and Man of the Match awards. Over the years, he'll grumpily say, well, the bowlers never get it. If he took 5 or 6 wickets in both innings, it might be likely that the batsman who got 150 somewhere might get the Man of the Match award. So he was always grumpy about that. But he's an extraordinary man, absolutely extraordinary man, and a very loyal friend. So Kapil, in that era, if you talk about great all-rounders, both Kapil Dev, Richard Hadley, Imran Khan, and to put them in order is a mighty tough thing. Although, Ian is my friend, I would have to put him at the top. When I wrote the book, I wrote a book about 5 years ago now.
50 great cricketers,
50 great cricketers of all time. Some of whom I'd seen, or most of whom I'd seen in some shape or form. And as you go back, of course, to the end of the 1800s, early 1900s, then one has to go on the stuff you've read. But in terms of placing Botham and Imran, actually, who I basically had together, I put Imran just ahead because Imran was a better captain. And Kapil, I forget the exact order of that, sort of looking under the desk here and scrabbling around for the book. I forget where Capel was, but I mean they were all supreme players. Let's put it that way. But I put Ian just below Imran because, as I say, of the captaincy. And I thought I could do so safely because I suspected Ian would never read the book. And as far as I know, he hasn't. That's fine. And I would have to put, I'd put Ian above Capel in all categories, to be honest. But you've got to say it was a magnificent era for the all-rounders. And those two remain friends. They remain close friends because, of course, they both play a lot of golf. So I suspect Capel gets more fun out of the golf now than he ever got out of the cricket. But they both hit the ball a long way. I don't know. Capel probably hits it straighter. Ian likes to use the wrong fairway most of the time. But I know they play a lot of golf together.
David, there's a comment from a senior cricket journalist that I can see. He says, no wonder David loves the tiger. He was as graceful as the crease as the big cat of the Indian jungles himself. So you got a lot of fan following here.
Nice to know. Still nice to know. Yeah, I'd say when we first toured India, first long tour I did was 81-2, and we made friends in Calcutta at the Tollygunge Club with Bob and Anne Wright, who were the hosts there at that time. Anne was head of World Wildlife Fund in India, and they had a camp at Kana. So, one of the great memories of that tour was taking 3 or 4 days off from the cricket to go out to Kana, spend 3 or 4 nights in the tented camp with Bob and Anne and their guests. We had the most magnificent sighting of tiger, I think, the first couple of days we were there. Absolutely brilliant. They are awesome, absolutely awesome.
Yes, so we are also going to talk a little bit about your commentary career and how you felt on screen after coming back from the crease, let's say hanging up your cricket boots, and then you and Ian Botham and even Richie Benaud you were with. Any anecdotes or any experiences you'd like to share of your commentary innings? And we wish to see more of you. I know that you've left Sky Sports. We would like you to carry on in conversation with someone on cricket all the time, and because your judgment, your analysis, as we've been watching cricket a lot in India, has been phenomenal. It's been really good. So talk about your commentary.
Well, yeah, it was quite well planned, and there were certain plans put in place. Now, I used to do commentary during my playing days when not required on the field. Started really with the BBC doing that. Then did a couple of years with Channel 9, won World Cup 92 in Australia and New Zealand. Following winter in Channel 9 with Australia against West Indies, the Test series. And that was alongside the likes of Benaud, Ian Chappell, Greg Chappell, and that magnificent team they had down there in those days, Tony Greig, of course. And you just learn by osmosis, really. You learn by just sort of sitting next to these people, watching how they go about it. You learn the timings very quickly in terms of what you say. That just has to be you. And I fell into it very nicely, very quickly. And then when I officially retired from playing, I was ready set to go with the BBC and all the rest of it. So there was a nice little segue into it. And then I had, 5 or 6 years at the BBC. Sky, there was a bit of a change around, so I then went to Sky for the last 20 years, which is fantastic, absolutely brilliant. My only regret is that they decided that enough was enough at the end of last summer. There are new trends afoot in sport broadcasting across the world. And for some reason, they decided that was that. So Ian and myself were, as it were, tapped on the shoulder and asked politely to leave. It brings to an end a wonderful time, absolutely wonderful time. The whole privilege of being able to watch cricket, travel the world. Obviously, there is a professional side. I was very proud of the getting it right. That was always my aim, to get it right, both as the commentator and as the presenter. So those skills don't suddenly disappear. The changing world makes it harder nowadays. But I am, if I can use this as it were as a job application or an advert, I'm very keen to get back into commentary somewhere. Anywhere in the world within reason. People talk about Test Match Special, the radio in the UK here, which would be lovely in its own way. I started there with TMS. I'd love to go back there. It has a huge reputation, quite rightly deserved and earned. But anywhere in the world, for instance, here we are talking to India quite happily. if there were a way of coming back to India to do it, I mean, I'd be absolutely delighted to do that. So we'll see what happens. But at the moment, it's everything's shut down. At the moment, it's all rather quiet. At the moment, this is the best thing we can do. I mean, of all the things that what happened in the commentary, in commentary boxes, you inevitably have the same sort of fun as you have in dressing rooms, especially when people like Botham carrying on the same way. I loved in our Skybox. I had a lot of great times with Michael Holding, David Lloyd, Mike Atherton, Nasser Hussain is the next generation. I think are both excellent, absolutely brilliant what they do. I mean, the only thing Nasser did wrong, as far as I was concerned, was he put a chair on my foot as we handed over in Brisbane some years ago now, which took me by surprise. And the only piece of good news, I had let out a strangled shriek, sort of which came across loud and clear. It could have been worse. Let's face it, it could have been an awful lot worse.
Yes.
And they, of course, collapsed laughing as they realised what had happened. I sort of hobbled out there, limping, and they picked it up. I mean, it's a lovely environment, I have to say. And all those media boxes around the world. Actually, one of the great pleasures is when you come up and meet up with the former opponents. So when we come to India, for instance, just as one example, Ravi Shastri, who's been Ravi looks after us. Whenever we go to, say, Mumbai, he has his place across the bay there, which is a little haven, peace, quiet, and palm trees, and that's a lovely place to relax. So people like Ravi look after us. People like Sunny look after us. And as you go around the world, people just look after you. Yeah, it's a fantastic community to be part of.
Yeah. Yes, it's a legacy you've built up. You've earned that goodwill, and the way you've been commentating, I think you'll get some commentary assignments in India as well. IPL is something I would like to ask you about. I mean, had you been playing today, you and Botham were probably the two of that era from the English team who I think would have been automatic choices in an IPL team. How would you have felt, and how do you feel about cricket today? And do you think the quality of bowling, the quality of batting is in any way better, or is it about the same at the top level? How would you have felt today?
Well, yes, IPL or T20, it's just as a format, was something we never knew. In terms of playing one-day cricket in those days, we had our own tricks. So, in my case, backing away, hitting it over extra cover, frontal back foot, that sort of thing was manipulating the ball into spaces. Never had any concept of playing things like a ramp shot. Once or twice, in extreme circumstances, played a reverse sweep. So it was it was inevitably a different era and a different sort of game. I don't know. I suppose I'd like to think I could have been useful in IPL somehow. I mean, the one thing you have to say is that as you move through the eras, people are brought up differently. So, I mean, so the likes, players nowadays, and it's a fantastic opportunity both for Indian players to get the exposure of something like IPL, and for English players and players around the world now. But at least English players are becoming more involved now, which is good. To get the feel of what goes on with those huge crowds, the huge enthusiasm. The game itself has evolved. T20 has evolved over the last decade. It's a very clever game in its own way. I still have to say that I look at the other end of the scale in Test cricket as very much the pinnacle and the big test of any player. If you can make it at Test cricket, if you can make lots of runs at Test cricket, you are a proper player. I know there are very talented T20 players who are very valuable in that form, and they earn their money, which is absolutely fine by me. But they cannot be. They're not good enough to be Test players, and that is just a fact of life. And there are Test players who don't have the skills to be T20 players. So I mean, this is the balance we have to live with. I mean, in normal times, it's a very, very busy world, and so players have opportunities. I mean, I did a chat online the other day with one of our one-day stars, Jason Roy, and I just looked at the list of the teams he's played for. And all these T20 franchises that he's played games for, I mean, it's a list as long as your arm. In India, in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, wherever he's been, he's found. Australia has found a T20 team to play for. So he's he is making the most of his talents in that respect. And I take my hat off to him the way he plays that game. It's awesome to watch. It's a shame, he acknowledges that he couldn't take the chance last English summer to make runs in the Ashes. He got a chance on the sides. His technique was exposed, and it didn't work out well for him. So maybe he's got the talent and the time to come back in a different role in that form of the game. But in the meantime, he knows full well he can make a very successful career in T20 cricket. It's a dream. I mean, I'd have to have a little bit of a fantasy to see if I could actually get the hang of it. But the only person, I'm just trying to think of who I could have been, as it were. I mean, here's one good example for you. Mahela Jayawardene, who is, not a power cricketer. He's not built like Chris Gale by any stretch of the imagination, nor am I. I've stood next to Chris Gale. He is a freak, in a nice way. And Mahela was very successful as a T20 player because he had skills. And so what you do is you make the most of your own particular skills to make your runs in whatever cricket you are. And there is that thing, if you look around the world, obviously Virat is outstanding. People like Kane Williamson, Steve Smith, the finest batsmen in the world nowadays can do it whether they're playing for 5 days, 1 day, or for 20 overs. It takes that sort of talent and nous to do that. But we'll never know. The simple truth is we'll never know. You'll just have to dream of what might have been.
Yes, our friend Isabel Duncan has been commenting on our chat, and she was with us in PlayWrite Conversations about 10 days ago. So she's saying there is a job for you in commentary, for which she will tell you about, something to do with Northants and some other team. So you have hope, David.
Izzy, I know Izzy very well. This is no time to have a private conversation. I'll have words with her later, but she is alluding, whether she knows it or not, to the fact that there are all sorts of opportunities. I mean, I had a bit of a chat with her at Lord's a couple of years ago, where I was doing something completely different, wandered upstairs to the media centre, and there she was chatting on the Middlesex, whatever it was, I forget who was playing actually, Middlesex Summer. All very nice and very easy and very relaxed, almost casual. But Northampton, I don't want to be rude about Northampton in public. It was the ground I hated going to most. Not because I didn't like Northampton or their players or whatever. It was just a ground where I never got runs. My career average at Northampton is probably in single figures. And if I could find anyone to avoid playing there, I would try. But every time I ask my captains, do you really think I should be playing in this next game at Northampton? They said, I'm afraid that's your job. You've got to come to Northampton. So, I mean, I could make runs against them at Leicester. I could make runs against them at Hampshire. But for some reason, and it then becomes one of these sort of deep psychological issues. For some reason, every time I went to Northampton, it was just with fear and dread. I mean, I'd rather play against the West Indies in the 80s than go play against anyone at Northampton.
I guess everyone has that, that one black spot somewhere or the other. And that's what makes life so thrilling and different. So we have only a couple of minutes to go, David. And I'd like you to just say a little word of advice for youngsters. There are many young cricketers watching, and how should they go about their cricketing career? Maybe just 14 or 15 or 19 at the moment. And what should they do in this era, and looking forward to being what? And Test cricket, of course, remains a great thing. But even if they just reach the first class level, what's your advice for them?
Well, I mean, there are some very simple things. I mean, cricket is both a simple game and a complicated one. You can make it more complicated than it needs to be, but the simple things in terms of, say, I mean, batting obviously being my strength, I can't teach people how to bowl. The simple things are watching the ball. I mean, it sounds a very simple thing. It's a very easy piece of advice, but for instance, in cricket, in tennis, in golf, which I hate, by the way, but in all sports, the contact between eye and the target is absolutely vital. And sometimes people move their heads, they stop looking a little bit too early, they think they've watched the ball properly, they haven't. But that's what you have to do. I was in Chennai a couple of years ago giving a talk, and I spoke to a group of youngsters there who were, say, between the ages of, say, 17, early 20s, playing for one of the best clubs in Chennai. And one of the guys asked, well, how do I make hundreds? But of course, they're playing 20-over cricket. And the only chance, you've either got to be brilliant in order to make 120 overs, or you need more time. But the simple story is you have to work out a way of staying in. Nowadays, of course, it's more complicated because of these different formats and people playing shots and trying to emulate the best in the world who play all these remarkable shots, sometimes ridiculous, but largely remarkable. So it's from that point of view, it's quite complicated. But you have to sort of try, I think, and identify what your strength is. There is scope for people to grow up and be test players. There's scope for people to grow up and be T20 players, IPL players. And the facilities are so much better nowadays. The training, everything is, there are so many opportunities now. But there is one key thing, and that is you must enjoy what you are doing. Approach it with a smile on your face. Very simple mantra. The better you play, the more you enjoy it. The more you enjoy it, the better you play it. And you keep going onwards and upwards that way. That's the best advice I can give you.
That is one wonderful advice. As a young cricketer, I remember being told to watch the ball, and it remains the same in 2020. Just watch the ball carefully, and you use the word mantra, which is absolutely right. They have to have their enjoyment in the game and love what they're doing, and that's what I tell them as a motivational speaker myself. So, David, time is short these days. It's a 2020 era. We wish we could have gone on with you for the whole day, but 40 minutes is all that we had. And PlayWrite loves the fact that you agreed to speak to us. We are very, very delighted to have had you here. We hope to see you in India and in Chandigarh for PlayWrite's event next year, early next year. And I'm quite hopeful that things will get back to normal by then and before that. So let's all keep our fingers crossed. Look out for good things, and sports is something which we're all missing. I hope it comes back to normal sometime or the other. And David, thank you very much. You're very charming as a personality on air. You've been such a brilliant cricketer, and I love the word languid for you. It is languid elegance that you exemplified on and off the crease. Thank you, David. And just one word of maybe before you sign off.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Great pleasure to be with you this afternoon. I hope to be back in India next year. We would love to come, obviously, for the test series that is scheduled. And if that's on as scheduled, then I will indeed be there in some capacity. There's a travel company, I'm sure, that will, Black Opal, who will take me there. And if the festival, PlayWrite Festival, is up and running as well, then that would also be a pleasure. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. We'll catch up to you, and many thanks to all those fans that have been listening in India.
Mr. David Gower, thank you very much.